All right, I'd like to call the town board meeting of the town of Lake Mills to order on this January 12th, 2016, 8 PM at the town hall. The notice for this meeting was published in the Lake Mills Leader on January 6th, posted at the town hall, the North End Boat Launch, and the cul-de-sac on Finch Brothers Road, and also on the town's website on January 5th. Item 2 is the adoption of the agenda, and I would like to motion that we slightly change the agenda. Item 9, old business. Item B, the conditional use for the Philip and Sandra Biddorf property. I would like to move that to the end of the agenda of old business so that we can make sure that their attorney is present. He has another meeting he's attending tonight. So I would motion that we amend the agenda to take item B and make it item F and move those items up accordingly.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Now, the approval of the agenda as amended. I would motion to approve the agenda as
I
amended.
have a point. Are we talking about Joe and Tim Spokes thing? I don't see that.
We don't need to talk about
We don't?
that.
Okay.
That was approved by the planning commission, does
That's it.
not come before the town
Right.
board. Okay, that's good, though. You're on top of it, Lee. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion on the agenda as amended? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the amended agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and all opposed, the same sign.
Who was made the motion and the second on that approval? Missed it.
I did. Who seconded?
I will.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Sarah. Item 3, approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, December 8th, 2015.
I'll make a motion to approve December's minutes as printed.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on this? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of approving the minutes as published, please say aye. Aye, and all opposed, the same sign. Thank you very much. Moving on to the treasurer's report. Sharon?
Yeah.
Anything outstanding there?
No.
You guys had a chance to look it over? I would motion to accept the January 16th January 16 treasurer's report.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the report, please say aye.
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 All opposed, the same sign. Now, approval of the general funding vouching.
I'll make a motion to approve January's disbursements of $1,718,131.05.
And I'll second that. Any discussion or questions on the disbursements?
I have one.
Yes.
With those Jefferson County property taxes that we had to pay, where would you like me to take them from? Because we obviously did not budget for that. What's the appropriate spot?
Well, I don't think there is an appropriate spot. What
I know
what Sarah's referring to is that we discovered that we were the owners of a few outlots in the Shorewood Hills subdivision, and due to some paperwork snafu, we are gracefully going to pay the taxes from the last year.
But that's only gonna be temporary because we'll
Yeah.
It's only
petition
one
to get
year,
that
yeah.
back.
How are we
No,
gonna
we
petition
are?
to get it back?
Call our new assessor.
Okay.
You think?
Yeah.
All right. You think they're gonna give it back to us? How much is it, Sarah? 80-some
It's-
bucks?
That's 60 some
Yeah,
bucks.
it's
Yeah.
not very much, but still.
Well, what do you think about where we're gonna put it? I guess you just gotta put it into public service, or what is it? I don't know.
I mean, where are you gonna take it out of?
Yeah.
Mhm.
How are we
General
gonna
fund?
classify it?
Just take it out of the
Okay.
general fund for now.
Comes out of general and go back in general.
Right, exactly.
You think we're gonna get it back? I'm impressed.
Yes.
All
We
right.
don't pay taxes. We'll get it back.
I know, but that's not what Mr. Erdman said.
No, taxes have to be paid.
He
as
said you're out of
Well,
luck.
yeah, they'll have to be paid.
He said, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, but you're out of luck.
I've got to talk to our assessor.
Okay.
Because we should be able to get it back.
Okay. So, any other questions?
Is Creason done in London Road?
Yes.
They are.
Well, they're as done as they're gonna get now that it's gotten
Okay.
cold.
Yeah, because they did a really good job except for right across from London Lodge. I mean, they really didn't do too much there.
Okay,
Otherwise, the rest looks good. Have you been
Right.
down there?
yeah, but I was mostly looking at snow, not at trees. All right. I guess we'll follow up with them, you know?
Yeah.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor of approving the disbursements for January, please say aye.
Alright.
Aye, and all opposed, the same sign. Approval of the disbursements. Item 6 on our agenda are the reports. Item A is the police report. Matt?
We had 102 and 3/4 hours of road patrol for the month of December. We ran 21 and a quarter hours of stationary radar. We had 9 complaints for service. Spent 4 hours in court, investigated 2 accidents, issued 47 citations, 2 repair notices, 10 warnings. We assisted 1 motorist, assisted the state patrol in the city of Lake Mills, and had 1 warrant arrest. We participated in the Booze and Belts grant program through the state of Wisconsin from December 18th to January 3rd. That's the increased enforcement for OWI or drunk driving. We issued 14 citations during that grant period of time, and 2 of those were drunk driving arrests on December 31st. We got, the boat is now back from Tuffy and in storage in the proper place off Highway B at Bannisex. We have to submit our intent to patrol and state aid application by January 31st, starting Ryan Wallace, or Ryan Walters is working with Sarah on that. And then we also have to attend a mandatory border patrol safety meeting on March 31st to be able to get our reimbursement at the Heidel House in Green Lake, Wisconsin. And Ryan Walters and Andrew Schmidt will be attending that training. Other than that, that's about it.
Any questions for Matt? Matt and I caught up with each other this afternoon, and I see you had a note on that fiber dome check, so we cleared that up. All right. Item B is the Joint Rock Lake Committee report. I attended their meeting, and we have started an extensive look at the 4 or 5 lake ordinances that we have. We're going to do some cleanup on those, add some things, so you should be looking forward to that in the next few months. Also, we received, I believe, the Clean Boats, Clean Waters grant again this
Well-
year. Not sure about that?
I was gonna talk about that in other committees.
All right. Well, shoot.
She told, the coordinator told me via email that we would be getting it, and then she saw that there were 2 of them, and she got confused.
I saw that.
The city has received their notification from the DNR that they have received it, but I haven't received the letter yet. So, I was gonna check in with her on that. I believe it'll be coming, but she did say that once she understood why there were 2 grants, it was fine. And I gave Patricia a recommendation on how to submit it next year, just to eliminate that duplication, but I have not received the official word yet.
All right. The understanding is that when they receive the grant, they turn the money over to us.
Right.
And we manage it and administer it, so.
Mhm.
All right, that grant deadline
Do
was
you-
December. It's
Yeah.
awarded in early February, right?
Yeah, well, she told me she was going to process it in the beginning of January, so I'm a little bit surprised that we don't have it yet, but, should I be working with Mr. Wilkie on coordinating that transfer, or with Misty, or just figure it out? Have you done any of that part of the
I
detail?
haven't met with
Okay.
him, so we'll
Okay.
just follow up when we figure out what they did. There was
Okay.
some confusion when both entities were applying for the grant.
Yeah, and I saw Rock Lake come up twice.
So I think they figured it out.
Yeah, they did, that it was 2 separate launches.
All right, so we'll wait to see what the culmination
Okay.
of that is, and then we'll need to get going right away to start soliciting some candidates to do that work in the next summer months. All right, Lee, item C, the Plan Commission report.
Yeah, we met last Tuesday, January 5th. That was the first time in a couple months. And we had 2 applications to review. One was Glenn and Wendy Prober, and that's going to be discussed tonight on item 8A. And then also the placement of a structure, Joe and Tim spoke, on a new outbuilding that was approved.
What did you come up with on?
We approved, yeah.
Okay.
We got 5 to 0, all in favor, yeah.
They approved both of those
Yeah.
items that were on the agenda. And just to make a clarification, the variance request from the Probers needs to come before the town board, but that shed placement for the spokes does not need to come in
Right.
front of the town board.
I have something there too.
Mhm.
That workshop that we mentioned in correspondence last month for the local land use officials, John Schultz, our chair, and Steve Zekoff decided they'd like to attend that. I signed them up for it. There's also a Plan Commission manual that they were unaware of the existence of, so I ordered 2 copies of that as well. So that grand total is $60 for them to get some training. I made that executive decision that it would probably
Good
be
job.
okay.
Well, if
Okay,
they're interested in going, I think that's
Mhm.
fantastic.
yeah.
And that's in Whitewater on
Yeah.
the 27th of January.
Mhm.
And you'll post that, so,
Oh, are you guys going to?
well, no, but I think
Doesn't
you
matter,
need to
it's
post it
open
for them,
Anyway, okay.
don't you think?
Couldn't hurt.
Yeah. All right, let's do that. Are there any other committee reports?
Nope.
Sharon, I know you want to give a report on dog licenses.
Well, they have until March 31st without any late fees or late penalty fee.
And so if you are paying your taxes in January, it would behoove you, if you would please remember to include your dog licensing fees along with your tax bill at that time so that we can cover that base. It is a perennial problem in the town of Lake Mills. If you own pets, you need to be responsible for not only their vaccinations and their well-being, but you need to buy the license so that we can provide that public service. So just a reminder.
I have another two. Sorry.
Go
I'm
ahead.
talking a lot today.
No,
I was informed last week that we are going to have an election in February.
and we're excited
That's
about
exactly
that.
my reaction. And we
What's the
have
date?
February 16th,
Okay,
so we're all sort of scrambling. None of us had anything on it, well, not none of us, many of us we're not going to need one, and so there are several of us that are now kind of scrambling, but we'll get it figured out. It's the primary for state Supreme Court justice.
so we will be polling here at the town hall that Tuesday.
Correct.
Items, I mean, there is only one contested seat then on the
Ballot.
ballot that day, and the hours of the poll are?
7 a.m. till 8 p.m.
All right,
I will be notifying and rounding up my
go worries.
troops tomorrow. The county is
Wow.
helping out a
It's
lot,
gonna be a
so
long day.
it is going to be a long day. But it's good, because we have a very big election this year, and we have 4 of them now total, so dusting off the cobwebs in February is not a bad thing.
It'll be a good practice run. So, voters beware, we'll be voting,
And voter ID is in play.
okay.
We
Thanks,
bring
Sarah.
it to the ballot.
All right. Item 7 is the period of public comment and questions for anything that is not on the agenda. We would not really be discussing it, but if there's something that you would like to bring forward to the town board, now is the time to comment. They're a happy group,
Yeah, move on quick. Move on quick.
Saving
Thank
their
you.
energy.
saving their energy. All right, item 8, review of applications filed. A, the discussion and decision on the variance request of Glenn and Wendy Prober at N 6462 Sherwood Hills Road, and I know they are here. Would you guys address the crowd from the podium so that it can be televised?
Have you all received a copy and would you like one?
Yes. This stuff is all in our packets.
Not this one.
Oh, not this?
I haven't seen this one.
Updated version.
Yeah, I got this last Tuesday.
Yeah, I guess I've got it too.
I'm just going to start out with number one. My name is Glenn Praber, it's my wife Wendy, and we purchased the home on North 6462, and it is a smaller home, probably of the least desirable home in that area, if you're familiar with that. And I'm going to just kind of read through here. 8 little things that we had written down here. We had completed a home inspection done pointing out a total of 21 safety violations within the property. Part of what we want to do is update the property and bring everything up to code. We are not moving closer to the water. We are staying within the original footprint. We are not encroaching on the left or the right of the property. We are improving the home and in the process enhancing the neighborhood. Upon the completion, if granted, we would be increasing the tax base. When we are making this a year-round home, livable for our family. We're excited to move here in this community. My mom and dad owned a property on Shoreward Hills Road since 1977, so I was a young man when I used to come up here and really enjoyed the community. And this has been a great opportunity for my wife and I and our family to move here, and we would love our daughter to go to school here and just become part of the Lake Mills. On the variance, I'm granted if the following conditions are met, and I'm just going to go with number one, and my response would be, we would be able to use the property technically, however, we would not be able to move into the property and live in it as our primary residence as is. It will not fit our family needs, so the hardship would be that we cannot complete the remodel and we cannot afford to keep it and cannot afford 2 homes. Therefore, we would not be able to move to Lake Mills. We are in the process of selling our home in Brookfield. On number 2, I would add that this home has many code violations. In order to live in this home as a primary residence, we need to rectify all 21 of them, including electrical, heating, insulation, roofing, plumbing, and fire codes. Myself, a retired fireman from the city of Wauwatosa, was really involved in housing and construction and fire codes, and so this property doesn't just meet the cosmetic changes. It needs to be gutted, rewired, windows replaced, insulated, and make it energy efficient home. Also in that process, it would fit into that channel community of 11 homes. And then number 3, this would be an asset to the properties along the channel. This property, once completed, will be a beautiful addition to the neighborhood. As of now, it is the least desirable, and it will be taken care of and full of life. Number 4 is there would be a medical situation with my mother and father-in-law. It's kind of a personal nature if that needed to be explained. Obviously, part of it would be that they would be eventually probably living with us, us helping them. And so in closing, I'm asking you to grant this variance. We strongly feel that we are not asking it's a very reasonable request. We are talking about 275 square feet to enhance the living space for our family. And this may not seem like a big deal, but granting this variance would make a world of difference for us and the entire design of the property. Also, I might add that we met in front of the board last week, and they voted 5-0 in our favor. So we would be honored and respectfully submitted Glenn and Wendy Praber. So if there's any questions that anybody might have, I'll try to answer.
So really, the only reason you need a variance is just because you're increasing the value more than 50%, right? Because you're staying within the same footprint, you're just going
Right.
up with it.
Yes.
Right?
And at the meeting, I was a little concerned about the height, but I see by the drawings that it is 34
Yeah,
feet.
34 feet, so.
We are bound by our fire contract to keep our housing under the 35-foot limit, so,
I'll make a motion to approve.
and I will second that. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the variance requested, please say aye. Aye. And all opposed, the same sign. Now you've got to go forward, you know that.
Yes.
You'll be making an appointment, we'll be receiving notice from the county, and so will the neighbors around you. I don't see anyone here tonight objecting, so I wouldn't.
Yeah, I've talked to all the neighbors in the area, so I'm pretty much involved already, taking care of the Needfeld's house, because they go to Arizona, so, got to know everybody. And as it turned out, my nephew bought my mother and father's cottage, so they're living there now, so.
Which is across the street,
Across
right?
the street, the little white
I
house.
knew I recognized that name. I knew I recognized that name.
So I would say thank you very much from me and my wife and our family, and we're so excited to move to this community and be a part of it and raise our family here.
Great.
So,
Sure.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for making both of these meetings. See you at the county. All right. Item B, discussion and decision on a combo Class A liquor and malt license applied for by Merrick and Associates LLC at W 7655 Highway V. Nobody's here. I wonder why.
I don't know, you've talked to him more than I have. I just helped him do the, I the paperwork file.
Well, it doesn't really help us very much, does it?
No.
Well, I think because there's no one here, I think we should table this because I have some questions for them. You understand what they're doing?
Not totally.
Not really?
Not- no.
Not totally.
I don't think they understand either, and I think before we issue them an alcohol license, I think that we need to have them here, talk to us about this.
Yeah. I mean, we table it, and
Yeah.
then if they would happen to come yet, we could still
Okay.
hear it. But
Well, I would motion to table it,
I'll second it.
and is there any discussion on that? There should be none on a table. So we'll table this, all in favor of tabling it until our February meeting? Please say aye. Aye, and all opposed.
That's Lee.
Hi, Lee. Okay, I really think they need to be here, because I have a
Yeah.
few questions. All right, item 9, old business, starting out with a discussion and decision on a dispute with the drainage board. We'll let you get your jacket off, but that's it.
We really can't stay, it's cold outside. You ever heard the song?
This is Mr. Leverton, Lee is our town's attorney, and I'm assuming that you are Mr. Griggs?
That is correct.
How do you do?
Would you like me to get started?
Yes, I think that's how we should proceed. I think you should tell us what your concerns and questions are, and we'll go from there.
Certainly. My name is Attorney Andy Griggs. I'm the attorney for the Jefferson County Farm Drainage Board, and I have the Drainage Board members with me. We have Peter Magnoni, Ron Gribino, and David Hughes. So, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us to this meeting. About 5 years ago, and I think you're aware a lot of this, but I'll just make sure you're aware of this. About 5 years ago, there was an incident with the Britsky Road Bridge where kids or somebody threw rocks off the bridge. And actually, this is a very good photo here, where what we're talking about is those rocks that are essentially forming a mini dam in the middle of the river. So we're not talking, or middle of the the drain itself. We're not talking about the rocks right next to the bridge abutments. Obviously, that's part of the bridge and part of the support structure. What we're talking about is the
It's right here?
rocks right in that area. You got it exactly. And they've been there for about 5 years. Now, my research, in my opinion, as attorney for the Drainage Board, is that when those rocks are in the road right-of-way, which they essentially are because it's by the bridge, it's the responsibility of the town to remove those. Now, I know you've probably seen letters which Lee and I have written back and forth to each other where he tries to contest part of that, and I try to argue that no, it is the town's responsibility. In my opinion, it is clear it's the town's responsibility to remove those. And given that it's been a lengthy period of time, we would request that you remove those as soon as weather would allow that. The alternative would be that the Drainage Board would hire to have those rocks removed and then would bill that back to the town. If the town contested it, there's ways that they could collect that or it could get litigated, but it really doesn't make sense to go to that point. Furthermore, I just received yesterday a report from your own engineer who indicates that, well, I'll read the report to make sure you have it. It's from Stephen R. Struss, engineer, and he wrote to Lee, thanks for these photos. From what I can see, there really isn't much of a problem. We would obviously contest that. It is blocking flow, and of course when you have rocks like that, it also causes sediment to be deposited there as well, which is going to further clog up the drain itself. Some of the smaller rocks in the middle of the channel could be removed. However, the larger ones along the edges should remain as riprap to protect the bridge abutments. And we agree, obviously it's appropriate to leave those larger rocks. We've never asked for those to be removed. This is standard practice and shouldn't impede flow significantly, especially under high flow conditions when the water level is above the rocks. I've included 3 photos of a bridge crossing on the Koshkonong River in downtown Cambridge. Here, even more of the channel is taken up by the riprap on either side. These photos were taken during a flood event, so the toe of the riprap is submerged. It extends a good 3 or 4 feet beyond what is visible here. My recommendation is that the township should have 2 of their employees put on their high boots or hip waders and move as many of the smaller rocks off to the sides as they can by hand and place them into the voids between the larger rocks. That will clear out the main channel as well as shore up the riprap to provide longer-term protection of the bridge abutments. Since it is a township bridge, I believe it would be in the best interest of the township to get this done. Improving the flow of water under the bridge and shoring up the riprap will both serve to extend the service life of the bridge. Please let me know if you need any further advice or if you would like me to attend the hearing on this matter. Thanks, Stephen R. Strauss. So that's what we're requesting. It's been a problem that's gone on for a long time. I think it's clear based on my research, based upon Chapter 88 of the Wisconsin statutes, Chapter 88.87, and numerous other portions of Chapter 88 where when it's in the road right-of-way or in the area of a bridge, right in that area would be the town's responsibility. The balance of this entire drain, of course, is the responsibility of the members of Drain 15, many of whom are residents of the town of Lake Mills as well. And so I would welcome any questions that you might have, but that's what we're requesting, and we'd like to have you do it as soon as the weather is feasible. Now, I don't know, I think those rocks are a little larger than they appear, and I suspect it would be easier if you had a contractor remove those rocks and at the same time remove the sediment that's in there. I also have, and here I don't have a larger picture, but you can see when the water is lower, I have a report from Ayers and Associates from the Jefferson County Bridge Inspection Report back in 2012, and I think that even better shows, and I'll have you pass this around, but it even shows better the rocks when it's lower, and it's this picture I'm referring to in the lower right-hand portion. And so when water is particularly low, those rocks are really, even to a larger extent, impeding flow. So that's our request, and we appreciate inviting us to the meeting, and if you have questions, we welcome those questions.
I've got a couple questions for you. Andy, did you send me a copy of that?
No, I just got that today,
Okay, good.
so let me show you.
That's all right. No, that's all right. What I want to do here today, it's more of a factual than legal. We can wrangle out the legal later if we want to. What rocks do you want moved out of there? Because that's the concern.
So,
If it's those smaller rocks,
it's
I'm
all-
not going to pay somebody $3,500 to come down there.
Well,
And
those,
I'll get my kids out there and move them.
right, it's all those small rocks. It's not the rocks next to the bridge are rocks that should be there supporting the bridge.
Okay.
So it's not those. What I do think you would find, and what I've been told, is it's actually a lot muddier than it looks in there, and that those are rocks that are a little bigger than they appear, and that it might be a little more difficult than you think for your kids to
Well, I've
move
been
them.
down there. Have you
But-
been down there?
I haven't been down there, just looked at pictures.
In fact, though, you have a letter that says it's totally damming it up and impeding it. Does it
Well-
look like that?
Well, it is damming it up to a fair extent, and the trouble is when you have that, it's going to also deposit sediment, so it is impeding the flow of water. It's not a complete dam across, but you can see how it comes across.
Where does it affect the land? Before, after? Is there any effect on it?
Yes, it is affecting because we just had a clean out, and the members of that drain, do you remember how much the amount of the assessment is? I've got it in. $47,000 that they just paid to clean out the whole ditch. So everywhere else, everything's flowing pretty well. This is the most major problem that still remains.
All right.
Is this flooding people out where we can point to and say, look, somebody can't farm several acres of their fields because of this? Probably not, but it's getting worse. And as you leave it, it's just going to cause sediment to back up behind there, and it's just going to get worse and worse over time.
I guess what I would do, is, since our engineer says it's not really a problem, is we would try to move the small rocks, and then if there's, I mean, this is up to the board, though, not up to me. But I think that it's a good thing we got together factually, because I thought you were trying to move larger rocks. Because for $3,500, I can't believe that's what it would cost to move those
There were
rocks.
3 estimates,
They
and,
were- that
and
was
the
the
other
cheapest.
that was the cheapest estimate. The other estimates were higher. But when they would do that, they would remove those rocks, but they would also get the sediment that's built up behind there.
I don't think
Now,
that's our responsibility.
Once you move the rocks, will that sediment move out? Maybe, maybe not. But right now, it's built up quite a bit in there. But that's what we're talking about. And that's what is a newer condition, because it was only about 5 years ago that somebody, be it kids or otherwise, somebody threw those rocks off the bridge and in there.
I guess my opinion to the town board would be, we wouldn't have to do anything if we don't want to. However, as the engineer Strauss indicated, move the small rocks, and then that'll settle the matter. I don't know why this had to come to this, to decide that.
Well, from the drainage board perspective, they've been requesting for 5 years that this would happen. The members of the drain, when we had this assessment, there were a lot of members that showed up. They're upset about this. They've requested that we push this issue. And so there's an awful lot of people in the drain who think that this is very important.
Well, I also think, though, that it was blown out of proportion partially by your letter saying it was damming it up.
Well, it is.
Which it is.
It is damming it. What we mean by damming is it's impeding the flow of water. And if you look, it does dam up those portions. Now, it's
Our
not a
engineer
complete,
disagrees
it's not
with
a
that.
concrete dam, it's not a complete dam across, but of course, it dams up in the sense that it impedes the flow of water there. And it does dam it up. You know,
It's a reasonable amount, so I disagree, but that doesn't matter. I think
Right.
the solution is fairly
well,
simple.
and I think the solution is reasonable. I think the alternative is, if it's not done to their satisfaction, they could have a further clean out, assess the town. I know you disagree on that. We think that could happen and would happen, but why don't we start in this way, and hopefully that resolves it. And
I like that position.
And I would expect
It's like,
that,
do it, and then you'll have to do it anyway.
well, I would,
We don't want to litigate it, that's,
right.
unless you guys do.
I would expect that if you remove, and we're talking about all those rocks in the middle region, not next to the bridge itself, not the abutment rocks, that should help significantly and that should resolve it.
And this comes from your board, because you don't have any, you're not an engineer, right?
No, we do have an engineer,
Okay.
and
I'm
that
just
would
saying.
get involved, but we haven't involved him to this point, but the engineer that's worked on Drain 15 is Dan Pernuski. and he's been the engineer who has engineered that drain, and he's the engineer we would get involved if it went further. But our hope is to save that cost, that you would remove those rocks that are damming and impeding the flow of
I
water, and we would resolve it.
Right, but I think what you have to do, I would tell the town, fine, remove the rocks, but we have to have some kind of a agreement or guarantee on the sediment. We don't have to come back in there and move that. You
Well-
can share the cost if that happens. That's a good way to, you may never have to have, just let me finish. You may never have to put out that money, the drainage board might not have to. We'll move the rocks, you guys, if the sediment is a problem, then you come in and pay for that.
My recommendation to the board would be if you remove the rocks that we're looking at there, then that should resolve it, and that's what I would recommend. And that's what they've been looking for. And the problem is that when it goes on for years and years, then you do have sediment that tends to be deposited, because anytime the flow of water is slowed, then that's when sediment sinks to the bottom and gets deposited.
I agree.
So,
Which for the speed that water moves through there, that's gonna flush really easy because the center has opened up quite a bit and it has flushed, but could you, Attorney Greggs, go up there and point to me which rocks you're talking about? So we know what we're supposed to be doing?
and, try not to block this, but we're talking about the rocks here, 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 and then these other ones. Not the bigger rocks, not the large rocks by the bridge itself. Those are important to have. We're
Right.
talking about the rocks that are in the waterway itself. So it's all these and these that are in the waterway. You want the rocks that are next to the bridge itself.
Right.
And the drainage board has never objected to those rocks, and if that became unclear, you know, that shouldn't have been, they're talking about just the ones that are in the waterway itself.
So I know this is just a little bit out of the scope of this picture here, but where Koshkonong goes through Cambridge, what's your position down there? Because there's windfalls and everything else laying in that water that's holding back it quite a bit.
If there's obstructions in that area, they will also seek to get those removed as well. You know, they wouldn't treat your municipality any different than any other municipality. Their whole job is, see, in Jefferson County, there's approximately 26 of what I refer to as public drains. And the way these drains work is when they get obstructed and the drainage board becomes aware that either trees have fallen into the drain or silt is silted in from the ditch banks, then their job is to get the members of that drain in for a meeting, and then if everybody is, or the majority is in favor of having an assessment, they raise an assessment to pay for the cost of that clean out, and then everybody, based on their benefited acres of land, contributes toward that assessment and toward the cost of cleaning out the ditch. And this is a big one that's, 15 is actually divided into several different sections. It's
Right,
15
yeah.
A, B, C, D, and
Yeah.
then 15 main. It's a very large ditch. It's one that's really come up quite a bit because there's been several times where there's been significant cleanouts of this drain, and it's one that many people really depend upon. And really now, they've done a lot of work to get it in very good shape. This is one of the last remaining problems. But we appreciate your receptiveness to addressing it. And thank you for allowing us to come here and show you what's really going on.
I have a question. I understand, I've learned a lot about drainage boards. I went to a workshop about drainage boards. I've looked at 88.6. And my question to you is, do you, of course, the Koshkonong Creek crosses many other right-of-ways. When you are assessing maintenance on those properties, are you assessing those individual right-of-ways, whether they be town right-of-ways, county right-of-ways, private driveways?
They have been and they can be, and really here the only reason why we're getting involved is because of the obstructions, which is a relatively unique situation where you have, it looks like it was probably some vandalism by kids throwing rocks in here, but wherever there's obstructions, we're addressing that, and when it's in the area of the bridge, whoever is responsible, we've addressed it with that. We've had Cambridge Cambridge has paid assessments in the past. We had, over in the other end of the county, the sewage treatment plant in Sullivan, not too long ago, paid $5,000 because they were contributing water that was causing problems in the drain that was affected by that water, which was drain 20. So there's many times municipalities have done things to address drains when they've affected the drain.
But you do not assess individual municipalities as you maintain these waterways.
Normally, we haven't, but you can. So for example, really that was an assessment when Sullivan paid $5,000, really that was an assessment. So the answer is yes and no. We don't always assess municipalities, but you can, and the trend has been to allow more assessments of municipalities, but most of the time with municipalities, we've worked out in agreements where we've said, okay, in the case of Sullivan, you're contributing a lot of water that's really affecting drain 20. Let's reach an agreement where you're going to pay something because you've affected that drain tremendously. Here, where you've impacted the drain is not through any fault of your own, but for whatever reason, these rocks were deposited into the drain and are affecting the flow of water.
So
But
where,
rather than saying that you should pay an assessment, we're saying, look, just get rid of the rocks, either on your own, hire somebody to do that, and that will resolve the problem.
so where in the statute is this mechanism for assessment to individual municipalities with the right-of-way? Can you show that to me?
Sure, it's in my letter, but it's also, if you look at chapter 88, 88.87 makes reference to assessing municipalities. It talks about road grades not to obstruct natural drainage, landowners not to obstruct highway drainage, so where you've got highway bridges. Then in 88.89, it talks about roads not to obstruct natural water courses. This is essentially a natural water course here. 88.90 talks about removal of obstructions. Obviously, that's an obstruction. So it's numerous places in Chapter 88 of the Wisconsin statutes. And 88 has been around for 100 years or so now,
Long time.
or a long time, maybe
Long
longer than that.
All right. I also wanted to know how you have determined that these rocks have been here for 5 years. Is
That's
there any
what-
documentation on that?
That's when it was, the drainage board learned about it. And the drainage board has to inspect these drains, and they're supposed to inspect all the drains on an annual basis. And so they would do their inspections, and there weren't any of these rocks. And it was approximately 5 years ago that they learned in their inspections, and they also had complaints from a number of people in the drain saying, look, we've got a problem by the Britsky Road Bridge. For some reason, there's all kinds of rocks that have been dumped in there.
Well, it has always been our contention as a town board, and this has been through several administrations, not only mine, that there were no impediments of water created by these rocks. We believe that those rocks were deposited there when the bridge was constructed. The bridge is probably about maybe 15 years old. Was done around 2000.
1990.
We have many, many people who would dispute that.
Is there a measurable way to know whether these are impounding water?
Your own engineer indicates that it blocks water. We can get a letter from our engineer saying it does the same, but it's obvious if you have obstructions in the waterway, it's going to slow the flow of water. Anytime that you have obstructions in a waterway, it's going to affect the flow of water. It's not dammed all the way across, but
Mr. Stress also says, though, that there's always going to be things in there. There's things under those rocks. There's rocks under the rocks.
there's rocks under the rocks,
So-
but it's the rocks that are sticking above the water that are really impacting it. If the water can flow over that, it's going to be a lot better. But if it's going to hit those rocks, it's naturally going to slow the water, so it's going to back up.
The Cambridge bit is a perfect example of, they've got riprap that runs out in the middle of it.
I would like to clarify this too. When I was doing research on this, and the research that I have is dated in August of last year, 2015, when I went to the website that the State Drainage Board has, I recognized the name of Steve Struss. Steve is a resident of Cambridge. He also serves as the village president of Cambridge. So I emailed him with our questions, and they did some extensive research for us, and his boss, Rick Castelnovo, sent a reply referring to 88.87. And so Steve is not our engineer. He certainly is a member of our community, and he has volunteered to give us an opinion on this. I wanted to make that clear. Steve has since retired, and we have not called on him in a professional way to look at this, but I'm sure that you have the documentation from the email that I had with Mr.
Right.
Struss.
I received that yesterday, yes.
I think this has gone like on and on and on, and it's become entirely too large an issue. I think that there are some other things that Ron was the original member of the board when we looked at it. One of the things that comes into play here is that there is about a 40-foot slope down to this lake bed or stream bed. It's almost impossible to get a piece of equipment down there. And when we looked at it, we basically shook our heads, didn't we, Ron? And said, what are we to do? In the meantime, I've done this research and gone to several of these drainage workshops, and I guess my question still stands. Do you require other municipalities to pay for these improvements?
We do, and we require that if they have a situation where something is obstructing the waterway, we require them to either address it or we do it ourselves and then assess them for the work.
I think we should look at those bridges that Steve sent us pictures of that are in the Cambridge area. Can you go to those, Sarah?
Hang on, I gotta figure out which email it's in. I was just looking at it on paper. I believe it's this one, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So the photos that you've seen so far are the Britsky Bridge.
Right.
The photos we're going to look at are photos of bridges in the Cambridge downtown area, which is also on the Koshkonong Creek.
Sorry, hang on.
It's all right.
These are all the same ones. I'll get it.
Take your time. That's it, 1, 2, 4, and 6.
That's what I was just on.
Oh, other bridge pictures, there you go. Is that it?
His email to me. He sent it.
We had a lot of,
Way too much.
alright, it's written till the December 15th. It should be there. I printed it out today.
What's the total right there? This is the right there.
Sorry, Sarah.
That's it. No, there it is. No, yes?
Yep, that's right.
Yep.
Sorry.
That's pretty
One.
dark.
There's two.
You can see by this photo that this is the bridge that I believe goes right through Main Street in downtown Cambridge.
Okay, these are the ones.
Plenty of rock
See if I
riprap
can get it to.
extending too into the water there.
Are you sure it's part of the district? I don't think, not when I was on it.
That's beyond the district.
That's beyond the district.
Yeah, this is beyond the district here.
Because this is in Dane County, correct?
Beyond
Right,
where the district
right.
ends.
Well, as you can see, there's plenty of riprap laying in the water there. I think those stones were placed there when the bridge was constructed. And I bet that bridge is about the same age as our bridge is.
I have the original drawings from your bridge. These are these.
That's, they're the counties, the township should have, that's all we're requesting, is that it gets back to specifications.
That's the original
And it's not, and it's vandalism of the town property, and that's where those stones came from, was removal of the riprap.
How would anyone ever move those stones?
When you and I were down there several years ago, I and Randy and you met, remember?
Yes? I certainly do.
Your attorney says $3,500 is enormous. How are you gonna get how big a machine do we have to get in there to get that out?
Well, I thought,
You aren't gonna lift them. There isn't a person in the room here that can lift all them rocks.
I thought what you guys were suggesting is that we remove the smaller rocks and leave the larger rocks there.
We're talking about,
It's still in the bed of the center of the ditch, which is what, 4 or 5 feet deep? Oh, that whole ditch, I mean,
right.
from right back here, all the way through town, I mean. it's-
What you're talking about is removing the rocks that are in the waterway.
In the bottom of the bed. We aren't talking about the shoulders, we aren't talking about the slant, we're talking about the bottom. Those are big rocks. We've had several people look at it. You just said it yourself a few minutes ago, it takes an enormous machine.
Well, just to get down there.
You can't do it with a little backhoe.
Well, you're not even gonna be able to get down there without going on private property.
The way the road is built and everything, you're gonna have to have one of the longest boom. Mr. Schrader, I think, can attest to that, I mean.
Actually, the suggestion would be that the bottom of that creek would have to be matted, and you'd have to drive a machine right down in there, and then they would have to be more than likely cabled, because a boom is not gonna be able, you wouldn't be able to get the boom and stick underneath it to drag those rocks back. That was the suggestion that, I had when I was looking at it with a contractor.
You're working in 4 or 5 feet of water and mud, aren't you?
Yeah, that's why it would have to be matted to go down in there.
Yeah, because you can't float it in.
And actually, you know, the center of that bridge is really flowing pretty well. Granted, it's not efficient, but it is flowing pretty well. I think maybe if some of those smaller rocks were moved from the sides, you could increase the flow. But in 2012, you know, when this whole thing was discovered, obviously the water level was a lot lower at that time, which made it look a lot more disturbing than what it really is. But I think some of those rocks have been flushed out when we were down there this fall. It really didn't look like it was holding back a lot of water, because the center was flowing very well. And I think, Lee, you were also down there.
Absolutely.
It's not that we can't make it better.
Right, and when you have a low water year like 2012, when you look at this picture, really is pretty bad when you see it when the water's low.
In 2012, we would have took all the water we could have got.
Right, so there you really see it stemming across. Talking about the one on the right here. And that's, water's lower on this, the water's worse. And that's the reason for the significant cost when you get equipment in there, because it is a difficult project. But if you can do it without equipment, you know, That's great, but I think it's a more difficult project than it looks at first
I have
glance.
looked at your proposals. I guess I was a little flabbergasted that you would even go out and try to seek proposals for us to do something. And the lowest proposal is $3,340. I don't believe these people could even get their equipment staged to do that work at that price.
Well, they've represented that they would, and they would be bound by their bid. And the Drainage Board has a legal duty to follow through and get appropriate drainage for the members of the drain. And when it's something that's in the road right away, that's when it is the town's responsibility.
And how would they do that without going on private property in order to stage that?
Well, first of all, they're allowed to go on private property in order to have the clean out. Secondly, they would do it in whatever manner is the best manner to remove those rocks.
And so that is part of the statute, that they can go on
Right,
private
there's a
property?
20-foot corridor on either side of the drain, and they're allowed to go onto that corridor or even further if necessary in order to clean out the drain.
Right, that's a good answer.
You know, these rocks don't match up. These compared to these, or even the other side.
You know, it's always been the contention of the board that this is not a problem, that the rocks are not impounding any water, and
These two should
that
be
is
over
still
here,
my
the one
opinion.
Below it.
I mean, it's like
I don't-
the huge rocks have been
You
moved.
just take those photos?
No, you and I, the day that we were doing a road tour or
Looks like
something.
winter.
Oh, I know, no, that's just reflection. When we were,
I mean, the big rocks shouldn't be
Doing-
moving at all.
remember the day we
Little
went to
rocks,
the
yeah.
UTV and we're inspecting London Road?
Or something.
That's when we took that picture.
You ever told them to? I don't know.
I don't think there's any work there.
That picture there was taken,
Would be,
it would have been.
August.
Yeah, August 10th, 12th in there, when we were inspecting London Road. And you can see in the middle of that, which is more than 50% of the width of the creek, there isn't even any stones in there where you can see where the water's rippling. That is just basically the sand in the bottom. So there's really, there's quite a wide area that the water is draining just fine. So, and that's a recent picture.
And there is an area where it drains, but it is obstructed where that is, and it's just going to get worse and worse over time. And it will flow significantly better if those obstructions are removed. And that's what the Drainage Board is asking for, and they have been asking for. And rather than litigate it, we wanted you to
well,
just...
I don't want to litigate at all, but I think that we need to have some time to look this over. It's always been our contention that the creek is flowing just fine. I think we'll need to have some discussion on this and see who we might employ to do this. Mr. Struss infers that we have employees in the town of Lake Mills. We do not. We would be contracting this work. And I'm not really comfortable saying that we're going to go along with the bids that you have. I think if we're going to remove these, I think we would like to be the ones that would do that. We certainly are not going to be physically able to move any of those large rocks.
Right, and that's what I was suggesting. I think they're a little bigger than you realize. Even when we're not talking about the rocks on the side, they're still fairly sizable rocks, and I understand that.
Okay, I think that we should table this until next month. If you guys would like to return, or if anyone else has anything else they would like to say, that's swell with me.
Excuse me, I missed that, I apologize.
I said, I think we should table this until next month. We need to explore this a little more if we're going to hire someone to physically remove those smaller rocks. I think we'll need to make a decision on this at another meeting. And if you guys would like to attend at that time, that would be just fine.
Certainly.
It will again be my contention that no water is being impounded there, and that I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill. And I do not want to go to litigation on this. I think we've spent enough time and energy on this in the last 5 years. Let's try to come to some decision and have this moved manually by labor rather than to employ someone to go down there and do any excavation and invade on other people's private property.
Well, we thank you for your time this evening. We don't think we're making a mountain out of a molehill. We think this is a legitimate problem. Many of the members of the Drain agree that it's a legitimate problem. The Drainage Board, who's charged with managing all these drains, believe it is a significant problem. But we appreciate your willingness to address it. And if you need another meeting, we understand that. We would like to be notified of the meeting, but we appreciate being invited here and the opportunity to show you what we think is a significant problem.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I think hope maybe a month is gonna be too soon, because really, I would assume according to what, Strauss is, if he wants to be hired as a, private engineer, he's the person that we want to have him go down there and take a closer look at it, but really, obviously, with freezing conditions, there's not a lot you're gonna be able to do for a couple months, unless it's 60 degrees outside. Unless he can take a look and make a judgment.
All right, well, then we're going to go forward from here. We'll do some planning, and we will notify you when we are ready to discuss this again.
Okay, very well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney Griggs, and thank you, members of the Drainage Board. Okay, we're going to take up item C, discussion and decision on the Wolf paving invoice. Oh, good, stick around for this. All right, we have not received any other communication from them.
I got one.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we got one about interest-free for a year or something.
She said, she called me today. She says, the president said that if the town needs more time for payment, he will allow a payment plan of 1 year, 12 months with no interest charged. And they are looking for an update.
All right, so Lee, you now have the paperwork on the Wolf paving contract. I guess we had them here last month and we heard what they had to say. We were operating under the assumption that a bid is a bid and that is a firm commitment from a company to do the work that we bid. They were refuting that in the sense that they thought that they could make changes according to our specs over and above the bidded price. We asked them at that meeting if they could, why they had not contacted us and said, we're going over budget here. It's not just a few $1,000s, it's almost $20,000. And so we left it at that. It would be my hope that we could strike some kind of a balance here. We have not, we've been very conservative in our highway budget so that we haven't overspent ourselves in 2015, and now it's a new year. So if you could try to strike some kind of an agreement with them in the next few months, that would be my desire, and I think the desire of the rest of the board.
Did you see the tape from the last month's meeting? So you can see that their claim was it was strictly an estimate, but I'm no attorney, but as I looked through the contract, and Lee, I think you can agree too, that there was no place in there that says estimate anywhere in there. So
They actually referred to a document that was drawn up between Payne and Dolan, and I remember at the meeting you asked those guys to use one sheet so we could compare apples to apples.
Right.
And they keep referring to that as coming from the town.
No.
No.
I think
They
that's
kept saying that,
when I watched it over again, I realized that's what she's talking about. She thinks that came from us, and it was from Rob. So that's something that you need yet, actually.
And really, they needed to notify us too if there was going to be any.
If there were going to be overages.
I could win any bid if I can change the price.
Well, sure.
Oh, exactly,
Sure,
exactly.
sure. And that was the premise that we were operating on. Okay, so you've got some time to look that over. We'll move forward on that. I guess we should just keep that on the agenda for next month.
Next month.
All right. Item D, an update on brushing needs. You referred to that. They kind of hit the wall, there is some more work to do on London Road.
Yeah.
And there's also some tree trimming on Shorewood that needs to be done. And I did have some complaints last fall from Sunset Court.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you, thanks for coming. And there's some more brushing and tree needs that we have. I think we've been very fortunate not to have any phone calls in the night with
Oh,
the
yeah.
winds we've had and the heavy snow we had.
It's been good.
I think our trimming is paying off. I was hoping that the weather would stay as nice as it was, but obviously it isn't, and I don't think it is worthy for them to go out and do any of this work until we
Yeah.
wait till the snow goes away and we look at our roads again and set forward on the budget. So that's kind of the update on that. Item E is an update on the Gray Horse home sites, outlots 1, 2, and 3. I've been down to the county, and it's always fun to go there. And that's what we were referring to in the taxes. I did speak with Land Conservation, and we tried to wiggle out of paying the $60 worth of taxes on those 3 sites, and it looks like that we're going to have to pay those taxes because you can't let your taxes go overdue. And now those sites are assigned to the town of Lake Mills. We will not be taxed on them in the future. I don't know how you think we're gonna get this $60 back.
Hey, we'll give it a try.
Okay, I don't know what that mechanism is gonna be.
Board of review will be coming up in a few months.
Okay, is that what we're gonna do? Bring it
Yeah.
up at the Board of
Sure.
Review?
Yo,
Okay, I've never been in a situation like that, and I don't think the county has either.
I did, by the, just an odd tangent a little bit, I did meet with our new assessors, and they were here and picked up all the building permits and did a tour. I saw them driving all over the town and did the annual visit to the mobile home park, and so they're working.
Okay,
Mm,
great,
good.
super, wonderful. And item F, which is now item E, is the update on the Stony Creek Road signs. I took a tour down there yesterday. Worked with the county highway sign department, and what we have done there is all the speed advisory signs that were requested. We also took it a step further and put striping on the posts on Stony Creek. The sign guy made some changes in our 35-mile-an-hour posting. He took some down to 30 miles an hour because he had been at a workshop where he thought that was prudent. We also worked a little bit on looking at the end of that road where it dead ends. And we can look at that in the spring. There's a guardrail down there, but there isn't very good signage down there that it is truly a dead end, and so we may want to look at that. There's a lot of stone and soil piled right at the edge of the guardrail. I think we should take a look at it just for safety reasons in the spring.
Can I send this to you? Thank you from Dorothy.
No, but you can read that later on. So that's the update on Stony Creek Road. I left here a couple months ago and drove that at night, and I did think that a lot of those signs had lost their reflectivity. We have been updating our signs kind of road by road, so I was happy that that happened, and that I think that is a lot safer than it was before. You still have a hard time going 30 miles an hour around some of those curves. I need to remind you that those signs are only advisory, they are not enforceable. And as Matt said at our last meeting, haven't had any accidents or tickets on Stony Creek Road. It's been a relatively safe road. And again, we talked a little bit about brushing, and that will be on our agenda again in April of this year to look at those things. Anyone have any questions? I'm happy to have you jump in. All right. Is your attorney here yet?
He's about 5 minutes out, he said.
All right. So then we will just come back to your item in old business and go on to new business.
you want to see if there's anybody here for that Class A liquor?
Oh, I don't think there is anyone here.
Nobody-
For the liquor license? No.
Nobody's came in?
Item 10, new business. Discussion and decision on the 2015 budget amendment. Sarah?
Yeah, I don't have them done because of that election. I ran out of time, but I did at least do my budget to actual year end. I don't think we're gonna have any budget amendments.
That's good.
Write it down.
But
That's good.
I didn't wanna just you know, I wanna be thorough, so.
But are we
I want a
gonna
little more
have
time.
anything extra other than cash supply, or are we drained?
No, we're not drained.
I mean, after cash supplied, is there gonna be anything extra?
There'll be some highways budget that's
Left.
moving
Left.
forward.
Right,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
So my chances of getting our capital outlay fund bigger is gonna be 0?
I'll finish this
Okay,
and
then we'll
email
get
it to you before
Alright.
the next meeting.
Alright, just checking.
But I just didn't want to be wrong and
Yeah,
present it
right, yeah,
wrong,
exactly.
so
I'm just worried about Matt. He might want a new boat.
He doesn't get a new
keep
boat.
dreaming.
He just got it refurbished.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave, we want you to be happy. That's all we
That's
care
right.
about.
So can we table that one too?
Yes, let's table
Sorry.
budget
But
amendments.
that's good if there's not gonna be very many. That's perfect.
And the discussion on the snow removal contract 2016. It becomes apparent to me that we need to start to move on this contract pretty early. I thought we should discuss it a little bit.
Did the other one get signed and sent back?
Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
That's what I thought.
yes.
Yeah, it was signed, we signed it last month and I
Wasn't a
thought I had
problem.
sent it, so
Okay.
it's there, it's in the mail at least.
We did have a lot of trouble with this not the last snowfall, the snowfall before, where we had the severe ice storm and we had to go over the roads again, had to buy more salt. And as we go forward and start to write contracts for the next year, there are some things that I would like to include in the contract. Perhaps an off-site storage site for salt so that we could manage our own salt. Maybe we could take that out of the contract and make that a separate item. Also, to look at some brining equipment. This is the perfect kind of storm where if we would have had some brining equipment working, we could have pre-treated those roads and prevented that ice buildup. That week of that storm, conditions changed pretty swiftly. It was very cold. We had lots and lots of complaints. Both Sarah and I were jumping through hoops trying to get things done. The most serious complaint we had was from the school district, and
We have a police report.
yes, we do have a police report, which I thank you for, Matt, and I guess we're just gonna have to go forward from there.
Can I ask, no, in going forward, I felt a little bit caught in the middle, and I know that my role is if residents have issues on their roads, they call me, I dispatch it. What I don't know is, you know, who calls the shots, I guess, as far, are we completely depending on the contractor to clear the roads in any fashion they see fit, or are we, like the day that it was kind of warm and slushy and if, you know, I feel like if I would have maybe sent him out and said, you know, go, it's slushy, you could clear it, that might have prevented it from freezing. You know, so my question, I guess, is who makes those calls, and you know, knowing how much it costs every time he goes out there.
Yeah, and that's a good question, Sarah. First of all, you know, the answer to some of your questions is if you get complaints, Jay needs to know about those if there's something he has to go out and do.
Right.
And as
right.
far as cleaning and slushing the roads and having put more salt out, I didn't know you were gonna be gone. So, you know, to monitor and watch those things. So I was communicating.
I wasn't gone.
Yeah,
I
thought you
wasn't
were
gone.
done with your steps, or I had a baby or something.
No,
Anyway.
Jason, that was.
Oh, okay, it does make a difference. but-
That was Jason
Oh.
that had the baby.
Well, good for him. But anyway, I was, you know, we had communicated a little bit by text, and I was texting Jay also about going out and also calling him when we were getting blown in drifts now that it needed to be cleaned out. And I guess one of the things is hope. I'm gonna go back to, I think we need to get rid of that sand. That sand causes us problems in intersections, sweeping and cleanup in Sherwood Hills, and it's not effective. So I don't know if you we should take a look at maybe increasing that salt contact with that, what are we, 6-1? We were 8-1, we're 6-1, maybe we should go 1-1 or take the sand away, period. I asked Jay for a cost on what it costs to truck the sand in, the purchase of the sand, the mixing of the sand, and the reloading, compared to what a ton of salt would cost. Because one of his drivers went out, was it New Year's Eve day, sanded and salted all of the outlying roads, and the very next morning, probably about 80% of that mixture was blown to the edge of the roads and did nothing. Well, the salt would eat in, and granted, it was a difficult snowfall. There's no doubt about that. But I think one of the things is take a look at,
This-
we could save $8,000 a year alone with not having to
Is
sweep
that,
our
is that the
roads.
cost that he has put forward?
No, for sweeping.
Well, we don't have any costs for sweeping. We've never done any sweeping.
I thought we always swept Sherwood Joe's Road.
No,
Well, we worked a
we
deal
worked
with
that
But
out with
Scott's when they
Scott.
did the, right for
And
that
the
year.
year before, we didn't do any sweeping.
your people.
The city is all salt, the county is all salt, town of Oakland's all salt. Very few, people are using much sand anymore.
And so we go to straight salt and we ignore all the environmental things.
I knew you'd bring it up. I'm just saying, it's something you might want to think about.
Well, my question really was about the communication. It felt to me
Right.
like there wasn't a clear division of, or clear expectations, I guess, laid out as to who's doing what. And I don't remember that being the case in the past, so I'm not really sure what happened, but I'd like to not have it happen again.
All I know is every time I thought something needed to be done, I just called Jay or text him.
I think a couple of things piled up here. One of them was the holiday. The storm happened on Monday. Tuesday was the Tuesday you said when it was slushy. The next day was very cold. The next day was New Year's Eve day, and the next day was New Year's Eve. I don't think anyone was there. I don't think anyone was monitoring it. And so it puts us in a situation where the two of us, and you need to call the shots for him.
Right, yeah.
And that isn't the situation that either one of us want to be
Because
in.
I don't feel like I don't know how to do that. I don't know when salt is gonna work and when it's not, or when that's not
That's
what
not
we
your
paid them
deal.
for, is to tell us how to work, how it's supposed to work.
I think
I
what
don't-
happened was they simply neglected to work a little harder the next day, the Tuesday afterwards. And I can't explain what happened in between, but I think we need to kind of cover that with him. And that needs to be something that we include in the new contract. So I'm going to start writing some parameters in that new contract and bring that back to you in February so we can kind of kick it around. In keeping with this storm, Sarah has a complete record of the complaints that we had, and we also now have this police report.
I did ask Jason for his side of it. He was going to mail it to me. I haven't seen it yet.
And
but
so we also have that documentation to go on.
he did note that the entire town of Janesville, city of Janesville, had to be evacuated, basically, the streets, so that they could go through and finish their job as well. It wasn't just us that had problems.
Right.
But
And it wasn't, there was bad.
It wasn't
There was
our
poor
snowfall.
roads all over.
All right, so just so we're on the same page there, we're gonna start to work on that in the new year. Let's do item C in new business, just because we're there. Board expense sheet approval. Does anyone have any expense?
no, but I updated the mileage rate for you guys, so if you
That's
need a hard
nice.
copy,
Okay.
you
Thanks.
can take one. It actually went down this year, as it should. Yep.
No, we're not going anywhere anyway.
I'll be going to the.
Jury duty, I only got paid 51 cents a mile. I get a 3-cent
Got
raise. Yeah. I got complained.
Thank you, Dave, for doing that jury duty.
Yeah, you're so very welcome for the experience.
All right, now we're gonna go back, because I see your attorney has come. We're going to cover item 9, item F, which is the discussion and decision on conditional use for Philip and Sandra Bitdorf, property at N7103 Stony Creek Road. And before we begin, I guess I'd like to say that this was a decision that I made. I was in the courthouse. I happened into the zoning office, and at the same time, Rob, the zoning administrator, was there speaking with Steve Nass. And we had basically been at odds over this, and so I spoke with both of them. And I suggested that we bring, now that the zoning to A2 has been approved, I asked that we be able to have a look at the conditions locally so that we could give our recommendations and pass those on to the county zoning board. So that's why we're doing this. That's why we're back at the table again. I emphasized through this whole decision that local control is important and that this is the grassroots decision-making body of this municipality and that we would like to look over the conditions. And so I think we should review the conditions that we put on this when we began and look at the site plan that you have and look at the conditions that you have put forward today. So please, introduce yourself and we'll go forward from there.
Thank you, folks. Tyler Wilkinson. I'm here representing Philip and Sandra Bittorf, who are here in person. If you have any questions for us at any time during this hopefully very brief presentation, please feel free to direct them to me, to the Bittorfs. We're happy to help you in this one. And thank you for accommodating me. I was promised to be number one at the Village of Marshall, but then the school board and the entire school staff showed up and did the referendum speech that went for 50 minutes. That's a good thing to be bumped for, so I'm not complaining. Now, one thing, folks, I did submit copies of our conditional use permit application to this board, not through Sarah, but through Chair Ustek. Does everybody have a copy?
Sorry, here.
Okay. And I do have copies for the public too, if anybody would like them. I'll just put them over here. But this is what we submitted.
I did forward that to you. That was the email I forwarded to you on Saturday, Friday.
And then these are pictures that I'd like to submit as well. And again, I have copies for the public if anybody would like them. But essentially where we are, this town board, oh God, I think back in August, approved the rezoning request from A1, exclusive agriculture, to A2, zoned ag business, for the purpose of the Bittorfs to operate basically a contractor storage, equipment storage operation out of their property. Ultimately, we went before the county board, and in the end, 3.2 acres of their 40-acre parcel was rezoned to A2 to allow the storage of contractor equipment and materials. So the rezoning piece is done. By virtue of the board having voted that this rezoning request is substantially consistent with the purpose of the comprehensive ag, or I guess what is it, the comprehensive ag use and land use policy, the conditional use itself is kind of de facto automatically granted, it's issued. So it is now used for contractor equipment material. The question really in front of the county board, or I guess the planning committee, where we're going to go in a few days, and for this body right now, is what requirements are reasonable? What requirements should be imposed on the Bittorfs operation to make sure that it's complying with the zoning code, but also to make sure that the neighbors' concerns are being addressed as well. And that's what we're here to do today. So you can see what we've submitted in writing. We kind of do the preamble where we let you know who we are and what we're talking about. But these are the conditions that we are going to bring in front of you folks today. Also in this packet, just for you, the last page are the requirements that this board imposed last time. So that's the very last page. Those are the meeting minutes. The second to last page is the plot plan that we would propose for conditional requirements this time that you can see. The second to last, or excuse me, the third to last page is just a blank copy without the modifications, so you actually have the original plot plan. And then we have the conditional permit application as well. So as far as requirements, what we're asking for, or I guess recommending as reasonable to this board, number one, we are requesting outside storage for limited things in limited places. And where you can see that is on this second to last page, the plot map itself. When the Bittorfs came before this body originally, they had proposed some storage down where it says driveway in that lower right-hand corner of the map. That request has since been taken off. You know, obviously that doesn't address the screening issues and screening concerns. So instead, we asked the Bittorfs to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, where can you store things so that people don't see them from the road? And so what they've come up with is where you see it's marked as A, that would be limited storage space, and basically that is storing against the shed, and so that folks that are driving up and down Stony Creek would not see anything because things are stored literally against the shed and blocked, and any sight is blocked by the shed. Where you see a little area marked as B, that area is marked only for storage of the work trucks and trailers. Work trucks and trailers seem to be in this kind of weird zone in the zoning code. There's nothing in the zoning code that prohibits people from parking trucks and trailers outside of sheds that I've been able to see. So to me, this is just saying, this is a reasonable place for us to say, this is the designated parking area. It's as far back in the rezoned area as we can put it. Hopefully folks driving up and down Stony Creek won't be able to see it. Now the other thing that the Bittorfs are proposing in order to further accommodate the screening concerns, wherever you see an X on this amended plot map is where screening will be constructed. And pursuant to the zoning code, the Bittorfs have decided to use evergreen screening. So wherever you see X's, those are trees, evergreen trees that are going to go in. Now the photos that I've handed out to you, this process has already started. For better or for worse, the Bittorfs have decided to start the screening process so that folks can't see much from the road. These trees have been planted in December since the county made its zoning decision. I understand that more trees are scheduled to go in next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, a few more.
Yep, they've got more trees that are scheduled to go in to complete this screening. So the idea is we want to make sure folks driving up and down Stony Creek Road can't see anything that's stored outside, that things that are stored outside are limited and limited to where they can be stored. And really the only thing that is not, I guess, blocked by a building are trucks and trailers, of which the zoning code really doesn't apply as far as I've been able to see anyway. So that's the outdoor storage side of this. I'm going to pause and just see if anybody on the board has any questions before I move on to the other proposed restrictions. Okay. Moving off of these outside storage and screening, the only real other issue that we've been able to identify are hours of operation. Now, what we have proposed here are the same hours of operation that the town approved last time. And maybe I should back up and remind the folks as to what the nature of this business is. The Mid-State Traffic Control is storage of road construction safety equipment, the big barrels, the flashing signs, you know, those type of things that you see at road construction job sites that they use to mark and for safety purposes. And what Mid-State does is on a work morning, folks show up, employees show up at the job site, they pick up, I shouldn't say job site, at the storage site, they pick up the materials that they're going to need at a particular job site, they load them in trucks, they drive to the job site, they put them up at the job site. They may come back to pick up for another job, they may not. But the point is that the work itself is happening elsewhere. It's happening at the construction site, whereas, you know, at the home, at the residence here that we're talking about, they're picking up, they're dropping off, they're leaving. And that's the idea. That's why these hours are set the way they are, you know, to accommodate the business to be able to pick up the materials and then get to a job site at a reasonable time. We're requesting 7 a.m. start time for pickups, and then going to 8 o'clock p.m. Monday through Friday. And again, that's when times when people may come back to drop off contractor equipment or to park vehicles, that sort of thing. Saturday, 7 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m., no business operations on Sunday. We did ask, or we are asking for one limited carve-out. Basically, this is like the emergency carve-out. If, you know, for instance, there's a tornado, it knocks down a bunch of construction equipment or construction signs, and the Mid-State gets called to go out. It doesn't happen very often, but it happens. So they just need that flexibility in case of an emergency that they're not somewhat, running afoul of the zoning ordinance. So those are the hours of operation. Any questions on those?
Well, it seems we have a discrepancy in what we at the town board said.
Oh,
In our minutes, we say Saturday at 8 AM
To 5.
to 5, and you say 7 to 4.
oh, I'm sorry. That very well could be a typo on my part.
Can you live with that? So we're saying Saturday from 8 AM to 4 PM. Well, 5 is in our minutes.
Yep,
Yeah,
5
8
is
to
in the
5.
minutes.
So it's just the same hours, it's just an hour later.
Yep. And my apologies on that. And then one last thing that's not a requirement itself, throughout this process, the concern we've heard from the neighbors is that of safety. That they're concerned with additional traffic coming up and down Stony Creek Road. There is a curve prior to the Bittorf's property, and a concern has been raised that we don't want trucks driving too quickly down that road and somebody could get hurt. This is not something that this body or the other zoning body has any authority to issue, but what the Bittorfs want to do and voluntarily are going to do is that they will, as part of this conditional use requirements, they will voluntarily require all employees, including the Bittorfs, to drive 35 miles per hour down Stony Creek Drive at all times, not the 45 mile per hour posted speed. So in essence, what they're saying is we value safety, we've got kids too, we're going to be smart about this, and so we voluntarily want to drive 35 miles per hour. So any questions on the requested requirements?
Safety is good. So, I guess the only question I really have, and it's not mentioned, I know you're seasonal. Are you like April 1 to November 1, kind of, sort of?
Usually we're done around November. I mean, we don't completely shut down because, like last year, with as cold as it was, we had a lot of sewer main breaks in different cities. So we would get called by contractors, say, "Can you guys set up a lane closure so we can come and excavate, fix it, put it back?" But usually by November, for the most part, we're done, and usually March, we're starting back up again. But like this year, it was 50 degrees in December. So contractors aren't going to say, "Well, shit, it's December, we're not going to work." It's 50 degrees, they're going to keep working.
That's good news.
Anybody else on the board have anything they need to air? No, I am perfectly open to anyone in the audience who has something that they would like to say. Limit your comments.
Peter Mushka, North 7180 Stony Creek Road, so I'm northeast of Bittendorf's property. I've been at every meeting that anybody has had, and one of my concerns, has always been outside storage, or the visual appearance. That's going to continue today. I own a business in Jefferson County, town of Concord. We have a commercial building. One of my conditions of use, 100%, including, I have a lot of the same equipment Mr. Bittendorf does with trucks and trailers. All that has to be inside. So I guess I would ask that having a very similar business, and mine not being nearly as close in proximity of the residences on Stony Creek Road, that his stuff all be stored inside. There's one thing we are forgetting, that at the county level, it was mentioned over and over and over and over again that everything will be inside. Here's pictures. Everything's inside. We don't want any outside storage. Now all of a sudden we want outside storage. So I think we need to stay consistent, because this is not consistent. At the Jefferson County level, everything was going to be inside. We have pictures that show that. You guys submitted pictures. You said it. And now we want outside storage. So I guess I'm a little confused with that. But I'd like to see everything stored inside. Thank you.
All right. Take your comments.
Sarah Mushka, North 7180 Stony Creek Road. I'm just going to kind of backtail on what my husband said, that yes, everything is inside, and that's what they've been saying. This went to the board, county board, twice. The first time that it came to the county board, it was up for denial, and that's when their current attorney came in. And that is when they had pushed that everything be inside. And I have the letters that they sent. I will give you those that show that everything was inside, that that's what they're asking for, and pictures that they had submitted, that everything's going to be inside. So if you wouldn't mind just passing this down, I highlighted certain areas. So, and again, on the October 27th county board meeting, their attorney verbally told the board that they wanted to use, and I quote, the land and building to store their contractor material inside the existing sheds. He went on to say, when referencing that Mid-State Traffic Control did, he quoted, they use barricades, signs, blinking lights, traffic control tools stored there inside those existing sheds. They have 3 sheds, the biggest one being 20,000 square feet. There was another uncontested conditional use permit that came up in front of this board back in April. And that was denied for outside storage of non-farm equipment. That was an A2 zoning. One of the reasons for your denial was because you thought that a 14,000 square foot shed that he had was big enough to store anything, and that you didn't see a point of having anything outside. So, again, my request, same as my husband's, is that everything being stored inside. With the screening that they have up there right now, from our house, even if they stored equipment behind an area A that they have listed, you still see that. It's an angle thing. You'll still see that from behind. They're just blocking it from the Donnellys. If you see up on the hill, I think it's B that you guys have it listed at, you still see that, and that's where they want to list trucks and trailers. You can still see it with the screening that they have there right now. So I'm just coming to you, expressing what they have said before to get this passed at the county level. And I'm asking that you deny outside storage.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Anybody else want to speak?
Yeah, Mike Donnelly. I live directly across from Bittors. We're at N7154 on Stony Creek Road. With regard to the hours of operation, I just want to underscore something that was said at the previous town board meeting, and Dave, I think you brought it up, and that is the beginning, whatever's arrived at on beginning of the hours of operation. In this case, they recommended 7. Is that's when work starts, and so they're not loading at 5:30 in the morning or 5 in the morning, and then ready to hit the road at 7:01. So I'd like to reintroduce that into your
right, yeah, which is
thinking.
a good point, and that's what it means, that your employees would show up at 10 minutes to 7, and then get ready for work. So
yeah, I just want to be explicit in that particular note. And also, given that this is a warehousing, I think from Monday through Friday, 7 to 6 would be more reasonable. That's an 11-hour day for them to get their work done. I'd like to see that introduced. And public safety, I can certainly understand the need for, having the flexibility to offer up safety equipment in a time of need like that. My concern would be that every situation turns into an emergency when you're running late at night, coming in at midnight or whatever. So how do you monitor that? I don't know. And lastly, with regard to noise, there is considerable trailer traffic, and that's their business, correct? That's what's just been described to us. And I think it would be prudent if for the business-related lanes of traffic on their property, where going to the sheds and where that on the side slope after a big rain, it washes out and it gets corrugated. And that's when you really get the noise from the trailers, particularly the ramps, and the loads aren't, properly tied down. And so if those portions should be paved, and I'd like to see consideration to that. I view it as a cost of doing business in this particular situation. So I'd like to see those items introduced into your thinking and into your recommendation to the planning and zoning, should they take this up.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say?
I'd like to speak in favor of them. Working the land around them, I see it as a very neat place. I don't see the value in having to hide everything. It's equipment and it's stored neatly. And as far as in the past, the trailers were coming and the trailers were going up there with horse trailers. Now it's sign trailers and there's a big problem. The horse trailers were coming and going. And as far as the three people that testified, especially, there was businesses running out of all three of those places before they got there. And their equipment was stored outside, out of those businesses. So, but we didn't do anything about them. So I'm not sure exactly what we're doing here.
Thanks, Jim, for your comments. Dorothy?
Dorothy Donnelly, N7154 Stony Creek Road. Now that this is zoned A2, we would expect that the town and the county would look at the Jefferson County land use, preservation and land use plan, specifically Appendix D, which calls for the development design guidelines of the rural, commercial, industrial, and agribusiness development guidelines. There are 2 points under Appendix D that pertain to this business then, as it is now rezoned. Number 2 under Appendix D says that it requires all commercial parking areas to be buffered with either a landscaped berm or peripheral planting strips consisting of either existing or no screening plants. Now the plants, the trees that they have placed already, will take a good 10 years to be adequately screened, any of the equipment that's there. Under number 4, Appendix D, it says that they must screen from view of public right-of-way and neighboring properties all stored equipment, construction materials, salvage materials, or other materials or supplies permanently stored outside. The standard screening fence should be a board-on-board fence at least 6 feet in height, or other fencing or screening materials may be considered where fencing design, color, and material would blend in with the surrounding environment. These are minimum standards that are in the land use plan, and that the county, the town, if they should issue a conditional use permit, needs to consider these minimum requirements that are in the plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dorothy. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Hi, my name is John Phillips. I live at 7072 Stony Creek Road, just immediately to the southeast of the Bittorfs. I guess I want to make a couple of points tonight regarding traffic and safety. The first of which, we've talked about it, a couple of it. I want to thank the board for taking the time last month to review the matter, and obviously the last few weeks to install signs. I think that was a very positive thing in an area that greatly needed it. Also, I want to acknowledge the gesture by the Bittorfs regarding the speed limit reduction. I'd ask that we further that just slightly in the sense that that they respect the advisory speed limits on the blind curve that's immediately south of the house, and that's the one that's set at 30 miles an hour. That's per the sign that's up there. So I guess I'd ask that that be respected as well. I guess the other point I wanted to make was regarding the blind curve that's south of the property itself. I guess, you know, by my calculations and my wife's who's home, especially during the summer months, we are seeing about a double in the volume of the traffic that was there previously. And I guess, you know, there's nothing that we're we can propose that would reduce that volume. It's only going to increase from here on out with the number of potential residences and a possible expansion of the business in the future. But and obviously speed, we've talked about that, but there's another matter of visibility, given that, the speed itself isn't necessarily enforceable. And if there's anything that can be done in consideration of that lack of visibility at that blind curve. So I guess this is not a dig at the Bittorfs or their drivers and how they drive. It's just the pure volume and what is a situation that we don't want to become a situation moving forward. It's not something that I'd like to come back and have an I told you so, because that's not, nobody wins in a situation like that. So, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Just 2 points on very
Sure,
quick rebuttal.
go ahead.
All of these points that have been raised are very well taken, and I appreciate them. Thank you very much. In our letter, you could say that we try to take into consideration a lot of the stakeholder concerns. That plays itself out with the gesture on the driving, on the speed. The Bittorfs, after you propose that, Mr. Phillips, are more than happy to respect the 30-mile-per-hour advisory speed around the curve. That will be done. That will be taken care of. I think it was Ms. Donnelly, the points you raised on screening. Absolutely. You're absolutely right, and that's why we've tried to set up screening in such a way that it does block the view. The trees that will be planted and have been planted will grow. It will take time, but they'll grow, and more will be put in, and that's the purpose, is to screen it so you guys don't see it, period. To address the last point that somehow we're trying to have it both ways, and we've asked for the inside storage only, as far as what I've been arguing from the beginning, this has never been a secret. We've wanted what this town board approved in August. We've wanted outside storage to the limited extent that things couldn't be stored inside. The vast majority of things were always meant to be stored inside and will be stored inside. To the extent there are limited things, as in these giant tire rings that go around the barrels and the signs that are too big to be stored indoors and that are solar panel or solar powered anyway and need the sun, those are the things that were always meant to be stored outside. Those are the things that this board approved in the past, and we haven't deviated from this. It has been, and it shouldn't be any surprise now. So, any questions from this board?
I have one question, and Sarah, I think you had mentioned about permanent storage of construction equipment. So then, temporary, permanent, I mean, what's your view? I mean, that's why I read, permanent is something that you put there and it's like,
It stays there forever, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to this here, I mean, it's temporary, the longest it's there is in the winter months when it's not in use at all. And then when it's the summer months and the job peak, it's probably not there. You know, it's probably going from site to site. So I'm not sure which code provision she's citing from, but this doesn't seem to be the permanent construction equipment that we're talking about. I would see that more like when you have a quarry and you have crushing equipment or a crane that's there.
That was me. That's Appendix D.
oh, okay, sorry.
Yes.
I didn't mean to blame you for anything, sir.
No, it's okay. That was Appendix D.
Yep.
Yes.
Point 4 under Appendix D. And it reads, screen from view of public right-of-way and neighboring properties, all stored equipment, comma, construction materials, comma, salvage materials, comma, or other materials, or supplies permanently stored outside. So it was an or. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's the screening plan we've submitted.
Right. And on the screening, I see the trees, you know, in the picture, and that's great. And they are already trees that are, if they're cared for, are going to take off. Now, are you going to double, triple those rows so that you can't, because normally like when you plant a windbreak, you plant a tree. So one always interrupts the airflow to the next. Is that what you?
We could do that. I mean, we've already spent substantial amount of money on trees.
Yeah, those are good-sized trees.
Yes. I mean, we are trying to screen as much as we can, and
Yeah.
I mean, we could put 2-footers in there. I mean, there's no rule on how high a tree has to be.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that
6
what you
feet.
did there was.
She said 6 feet? 6 feet. She just read
So that's the fence, that's the fence.
That's the fence.
Oh,
Or
he's-
shrubbing, then it's it.
But that's,
And all of these trees that Phil bought were 8 to 10 feet. We
It
weren't
says
going
the
by that
standard
one.
screening fence. This is in
The standard screening fence.
standard screening fence. This is what they suggest. This is the minimum requirement. The standard screening fence should be a board-on-board fence at least 6 feet in height. Other fencing or screening materials may be considered where fencing design, color, and material would blend with the surrounding environment.
Which the trees are going to blend in a lot better, and also a 6-foot screen fence. With the elevation of your buildings, you would look right over the top of that baby.
But this is going to be quite some time before these trees grow and provide a screen.
I agree.
And Sandra and I had talked about that. I mean, behind those trees, we could put up a fence if, you know, if we wanted to, try to block it a little bit more.
I think the buildings themselves and the design that you have put forward do screen most of the views that would be there. I think you hearing what your neighbors have to say is going to definitely work in your minds on how you should be handling things. And I wanted to bring to your point, Mushkas, that the site, what you were citing when we approved or said we did not want outdoor storage at that site on North Krogville Road, that was overturned by the county board, and they allowed outdoor storage.
There wasn't anyone who was opposed to it. There wasn't any neighboring properties who were at the county level either who were opposed to it. So I feel sometimes that if there are neighbors who are opposing these things, that they do listen to them as well. So I feel that had some play at the county level, and I knew that had happened.
I would like to think that as elected representatives of our town, that we are reflective of what people are asking us to do. So I would like to put forward that we did say that we would like no outdoor storage at that site, and that was overturned by the county board. That was not personal opinion, that was us acting as elected officials. I'm perfectly happy with what we did before. I think that you have made a full-fledged effort to begin the screening process. I think hearing what your neighbors say, I think that's going to be important as you go forward. I think the other thing that was of concern to everyone is that your business would grow and that there would be violations in the future. And I guess I'm not worried about that at this point in time. I think you've heard what your neighbors say. I'd like you to make those adjustments in this, though, from the Saturday to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And that's on me. I will make that adjustment, absolutely.
I did drive that road the other day. I think it's almost impossible to go over 30 miles an hour around that corner. And I think voluntarily they decide that they are going to go at 35 miles an hour. I think that their equipment and their speed is behooving of them to keep their equipment in good shape. I think they should be allowed to work until 8 p.m. Most summer evenings, 8 p.m. is kind of mid-evening. This way they can get their equipment staged and ready to go, and then they can head out at either 7 or 8 a.m. And I think that is a reasonable request. As far as more screening goes, I think that it would behoove you to invest some more money in trees as the years go on, but I think that the way things are set up, the buildings themselves and the elevation of your lot screen a great deal of what goes on there. I am sorry that we have had to stretch it this far, and I am ready to put a vote together to recommend to the county. And with that in mind, I did receive notice.
Excuse me, one last one. Is there any consideration to our request for paving?
I think that would take precedence. I certainly would not ask you to pave your driveway. I certainly would not ask any of my neighbors to pave their driveways. In fact, in a near lake area, it's almost more sustainable to have a gravel driveway. And I think with the equipment that they have, they certainly are not going to allow their driveways to become potholed so that it irritates you or destroys their equipment. I think that's asking too much of your neighbors to command that they have paved driveways.
Plus, there's tractors that go up and down there too.
Well, we live in a rural area, and I don't think that kind of a condition is a useful condition in a rural area. I just wanted to say that the conditional use application came, and the meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 21st at 7 p.m., and that is an open meeting. There are several other petitions there, but the conditional use permit is on that agenda. It is the last thing on the agenda. So just for public information, that is when that meeting occurs. You guys have anything you'd like to say?
Well, I visited the site last weekend and was happy with the screening with the trees and the plans for additional trees and extending some of the trees out. And they were a good size trees planted. And I think the first thing I noticed when I got there was just getting out of the car and how noisy the highway was. I was like shocked. I didn't know.
I-94.
I-94, yeah, that was what's surprising. I don't know, maybe it was just the wind that day or just the way the sound was traveling, but, and it was, yeah, it's a very clean property. There was nothing outside, just besides there was a weight, barrel weights thing on the one corner of the building. That was about it. And I understand some of that equipment comes out in the summer because of the solar needs and what have you. But yeah, overall, I thought it was very well maintained, and behooved that other properties in the township could be that well maintained.
That well maintained.
After touring London Road a few times, so leave it at that. Do you have anything, Dave?
I don't.
Mr. Wilkinson, would you include these changes that we've talked about, the 8 to 5 on Saturday and the voluntary 35 miles per hour?
Yes.
With inclusion of the 30 miles per hour at the blind curve?
Yep.
You might want to include the address at that area,
Okay.
just for reference for the county board. I will trust that you will do that, and then you will forward that on to the town.
And to you at the same time as well, and to Clerk Fitzgibbons, just to make sure there's a record.
And then I think that should come from our town board to the county. And so when you receive that, Sarah, you will send that along. And then I would motion that we accept the conditions as they are presented with the discussion that we've had, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., Saturday from 8 to 5, with no business hours on Sunday. Operation of these hours as in that paragraph, in case there is an emergency. I think we all understand that. With the inclusion of the voluntary 35 miles per hour on the road and 30 miles an hour at the blind curve with the address included. So I would motion that we accept these conditions and forward them on to Jefferson County. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Now, is there any discussion on our board? Hearing no discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye, and all opposed, the same sign. Thank you. And I think it's been a very good exercise for all of us. I think we've all learned a lot, and as we go forward, we expect good things. Thank you. It's been a long process, but I think very worthy. We do have a few other items on our agenda. It'll take a few minutes in order to, you guys are all ready to go home and watch the news, right?
I'll stay and listen if you like.
Yeah, it's on their dime. Willie, you were kind of quiet tonight. Come on.
She will. She'll read that.
You're all quiet. Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever met Peter Lewis.
How about that line curve? I can feel those trees.
Carrie?
Karen.
Karen.
Where to find your turn back?
What's that?
Where to find that you turn back?
Yeah.
No, I know where you live. I met you, you were plowing the back field. I was setting traps one day. That was probably.
Yep, yep.
For my
Yeah.
At that time, they said they had to.
If it's not being recorded, something.
Yeah, you have to do a speed study.
Study and.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Are you still on camera? Okay. All right, I'm gonna call the meeting back to order, so we go home and watch the news.
Yeah. See you later.
Item number 11 is correspondence, and I know we have a number of items of correspondence.
Okay.
Nice to see you,
See
thank you.
later.
We have received a letter from a concern. I would like to personally thank you for taking our concerns over speed and safety on Stony Creek Road into consideration and for acting on those concerns by installing the new reflective curve signs with the speed advisories. Sincerely, Dorothy Donnelly. We received a thank you letter from the Lake Mills Optimist Club for allowing them to use the town hall for their... Oh, sorry.
You can't hear it all.
Okay. Thank you for letting them use the town hall for the Christmas Adopted Family Program.
Could you guys move your discussion either into the office or outside? I don't want to kick you out, but we're on camera, you know, so you can use the office, it's warm in there.
Some teleconferences, the Winter Spring series of teleconferences from the UW Extension, promoting, protecting wetlands and updates to shoreland zoning might be.
It's an everyday thing.
Notice of public hearing, Plan Commission of the city is hearing zoning amendments from John Laundrie.
26 too.
Yes, it is. John Laundrie and for the property located at 190 West Tyranina Park Road, from single-family low-density residential to to planned business district. Sorry,
What time is that meeting? 7.
Tuesday, January 26th, 2016, 7 p.m. City Council Chambers, 200 Water Street.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
All right. The We Energies, you remember last month we talked about how they were going to do some sort of pop-up spot to accommodate their work. Well, I talked to the guy and he said that they have found a better spot in the city limits. They're still going to do the work in the town, but they have found a better spot for their needs. So, but it's pretty close to, I think, the border. And he'll keep us in the loop because the work is obviously being done in the town. Now, is this separate from that?
I just received that.
Okay.
It's just a notice of
Deerfield
more facilities that are going to be improved.
Oh, okay.
When we were out driving Stony Creek Road with the sign crew, we also cruised up Crowville Road, and there were a lot of brushing marks, and there were also a lot of posts that had been placed for new electrical poles. So there's going to be extensive work out there. I think they were working ahead thinking that the winter was never going to come, so they're probably set back a little ways now, but in the next few months that all is going to come to a head.
The other project they have going too is coming down where our Deepwater well is, going north down Crossman Road. The three-phase power lines, the 25K lines, are going to be moved out of the field and brought up for better access going down along the west side of Crossman Road up to Highway A, down Highway A, and then reconnect on London Road and run it down right away there. And that project is spring of 2016, so I got a notification here about 2 weeks ago on that one.
Plenty of stuff going on as far as power goes.
All right.
Doesn't really concern us, but it might concern some of our citizens.
We've been getting some communication from about Wisconsin e-cycling. The laws are changing. We also, received word a few months ago that the recycling grant that we participate in every year is going to be decreasing because the funding was cut. So there's been sort of a push to contact legislators, and I'm not doing that. I'm not in a position to do that, but I wanted to pass that on in case anybody does want to take that up. There, I guess Jorgensen is going to co-sign a bill that's in works right now, so been getting some communications about that. And also, we did our Clean Sweep donation this month, and we received the updated packet of information about all that is involved in that. I'll see if I can get a new brochure with the dates on it, so I can get that on the website. I'm sure that's out there. Okay. Also, last month we received a letter from Charlie Eggert, who represents Ken Setz, about the excessive fees involved in his condo plat, and now we have an actual request for reimbursement in the form of a letter. I'll just summarize here the very end of it. Mr. Setz would respectfully request that the town refund $1,150 due to the fact that it very little time in the review of his condominium application, and because the amount charged is greatly in excess of the actual cost of any review the town had, if any, which is in violation of Wisconsin statutes. He also requests the town change its policy for future applicants so that it is in complete compliance with the law. This is in compliance. I don't know how he knows how much time is involved, but I have an opinion on that if anyone wants to hear it. So do we just we write him a letter? Do we put it on an agenda? How do we proceed with that?
Well, last month, I think that our discussion involved the fact that he had never said anything before. And the fees are the fees. We're not amending the agenda, and we're not amending the ordinance.
Or the fee cycle.
Or the fee schedule for his request. And I suppose it would be courteous if we were to send him a note and say that we are not changing our ordinance or refunding him any money.
Okay.
I could help you with that.
All right. I can get it started at least.
All right.
All right. We received the updated packet from the Towns Association. I didn't pay the bill yet. It's not due for a couple months, but I did receive the information. So there's a little DVD on some current events and some documentation. I don't know. Maybe I should just make you a copy of that.
Urban Towns Committee.
Yeah. Well, which is just it's part of the Wisconsin Towns Association. We actually pay twice, one to each.
That is not true, Sarah. The Urban Towns Committee asked for a voluntary investment of .25 per capita.
Voluntary?
In towns that are larger than 25,000. And we've always contributed to this because this is the lobbying arm of the Wisconsin Towns Association.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Baxter and Woodman newsletter, a holiday communication from the town's website designer, and more annexation stuff, which I know. It just seems like such a waste of paper.
Okay.
I mean, if we can't do anything about it, I mean, I appreciate that they let us know about it, but there's a lot of paperwork involved in this stuff.
I wanted to tell you that I was a little overwhelmed by the paperwork, the annexation paperwork, and so I asked Mark Sewell, the attorney that helped us before, if he would help us look at this. And so he has agreed to do that. I told him that I would forward him the paperwork and that we would go from there. I think what we're literally doing is creating an island here. I'm not sure that they can, maybe it isn't an island because this property still remains in the town.
As long as it's connected to something else, it's not an island. If this was all city, then that would be an island, and the island is illegal.
There is an extensive amount of paperwork that needs to go into this, and I guess I just asked him if he would review it.
I would like for him to kind of give us a bullet point of what the procedure is too, just because I feel like I'm getting so many different pieces and not having any real grasp of what the whole puzzle looks like.
That's the other reason that I would like very much to see the people who applied for the liquor license, because it is that property that is hanging in the balance.
I was wondering what was that.
I just wanted you to know that I have made contact with Mark, and he was happy to help us. I asked Sarah to send some of the annexation work to him. I told him that I would agree to his fee and that I would give him a do not exceed number so that he can look at those things. And I guess we'll let him do that, and then we'll come back in February. I just didn't feel like I think we need to have someone review this. And we cannot object, and that's what Mark said.
Yes.
We can't object to the annexations, but we are leaving that one property dangle there. And when I was at the highway meeting that I went to last Friday, it was the grant review. I had time to talk with Brian Yubovich in the County Highway Department about the concerns I had on County Highway V. And Brian stated that neither the city nor the new grocery store have ever been given a permit of access onto County Highway V. And I believe that that will be something that will be required of the new road that is to go in, Elm Street. I think the county has approved that, and also the driveways or the other traffic things that are going to go on there. So I think there is some areas of contention here, and I just like to have an attorney look over these annexation papers.
But all that stuff that goes on Highway V, that's a county thing.
It's a county highway, but they don't have any permits. They don't have permits to access those roads as they are now.
But it's still county matter.
Yeah. I still think there's some things that aren't, the I's are not dotted and the T's are not crossed. So let's forward that to Sewell too. We didn't have time to put this on the agenda, but we will put this on the agenda in February so that you know the rate that he will charge us, and then we'll agree on the not to exceed in the review.
Okay.
So thanks, Sarah, that's good that got brought forward. Item 12, meeting schedule. Flipping through the months, February 2nd, 2016, the Joint Rock Lake Committee meets at 6 p.m. On February 2nd, the Planning Commission meets at 8 p.m. and our regular town board meeting is February 9th at 8 p.m.
The election, February 16th.
Oh, okay, February 16th election. And the meeting that those guys are going to, you're gonna post on
January
January
27th, yeah.
And if you guys decide that you want to go to either of these meetings, the county meeting on the rezoning and the conditions, or if you want to go to the city planning commission meeting where they're looking at the Highway V scenario, if we're gonna show up together, we really should have those meetings posted too, so.
Do you want me to just post them all?
Why don't you just do it in case we decide we're gonna go and divide and conquer here? I would make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Okay.
Aye. Thank you.
So it is 7 p.m.